on the road where everything just stops making sense? I'm talking about the kind of experience that makes you question everything you thought you knew about life, about people, about the very fabric of reality itself. Well, buckle up, friend, because what I'm about to tell you happened to me on a stretch of Route 66 that I'd driven 1,000 times before, and it changed everything I thought I knew about my own past. Name's Jake Morrison, and I've been hauling freight across this great nation for 23 years. Started when I was 22, fresh out of a marriage that went south faster than a snowbird in winter. Back then, I thought the road was my escape. Turns out it was just another way of running from the mess I'd left behind. But we'll get to that part later, because what happened that scorching Tuesday afternoon in Arizona still gives me chills, even now. Tell me something in the comments. Have you ever met someone who knew things about you that they had no business knowing? Things that made your blood run cold and your heart skip a beat? Because that's exactly what happened when this young girl appeared out of nowhere on that lonely stretch between Flagstaff and Winslow. It was about 3 in the afternoon, and the Arizona sun was beating down like the devil's own hammer. Temperature gauge on my Peterbilt was pushing the red zone, and I was thinking about pulling over at the next truck stop to let her cool down. The asphalt was shimmering with heat waves, making everything look like a mirage. You know how it gets out there in the desert. So hot you can practically see the air itself dancing. Traffic was light but steady. Couple of RVs with out-of-state plates, probably retirees living their golden years on the road. A few cars with families heading to the Grand Canyon. Nothing unusual for a Tuesday on the Mother Road. I had my CB crackling with the usual chatter from other drivers warning about speed traps and construction zones ahead. Everything was normal, routine, just another day in the life of a long-haul trucker. That's when I saw her, just standing there on the shoulder, maybe 50 yards ahead, wearing what looked like a cheerleader outfit, red and white, the kind you'd see at any high school football game across America. Couldn't have been more than 19, 20 at most. The uniform was pristine, like she'd just walked off a football field, but she was alone out there in the middle of nowhere with no car in sight, no broken-down vehicle. Nothing. Now, I've seen plenty of broken-down vehicles and stranded motorists in my time, but something about this girl was different. She wasn't waving for help or looking distressed about a car. She wasn't holding a gas can or a cell phone. She was just standing there, staring right at my truck like she was waiting for me specifically, like she knew exactly when I'd be coming down that stretch of highway. As I got closer, I could see her face more clearly. Pretty little thing. Blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, but her eyes, man, her eyes looked like she'd been crying, like someone had just ripped her heart out and stomped on it. You know that look, the kind that comes after a fight with someone you love when the words have been said and can't be taken back, the kind of sadness that goes deeper than just teenage drama. I was doing about 65, cruise control engaged, air conditioning blasting to keep the heat at bay, when she suddenly stepped closer to the road. Not into traffic, mind you, but close enough that I could see the determination in her stance. She cupped her hands around her mouth like she was about to yell something across a football stadium, and that's when my whole world came crashing down around me. Jake Morrison, you left my grandmother crying on her wedding day. Now, I want you to imagine hearing your full name, your real, honest-to-God full name, shouted by a complete stranger in the middle of nowhere. But that wasn't the part that made me hit the brakes so hard I nearly jackknifed the whole rig. It was what she said about a wedding day, about someone crying, about something I'd tried to forget for over 20 years. My foot slammed on the brake pedal like it had a mind of its own. The air brakes hissed and squealed, and I felt the trailer start to swing as I fought to keep control. The cars behind me were honking and swerving to avoid rear-ending my rig. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst right out of my chest. 23 years of professional driving, and I'd never had a panic stop like that. I managed to get the truck under control and pulled over onto the shoulder about 100 yards past where the girl was standing. My hands were shaking as I put the rig in park and engaged the air brakes. The engine was still running, diesel fumes mixing with the desert heat, but all I could think about was what she'd said. How could this kid, this complete stranger, know about Sarah? How could she know about the biggest mistake of my life? See, here's the thing I haven't told you yet, and it's the part of my story I've spent 2 decades trying to outrun. Back in 2003, I was supposed to marry a woman named Sarah Chen. Beautiful, kind, patient Sarah who put up with my drinking and my anger and my complete inability to be the man she deserved. We had the church booked, the flowers ordered, the whole 9 yards. Her family had flown in from California, Mine had driven down from Montana. Everything was perfect except for me. The night before our wedding, I got cold feet. Not just cold, they were frozen solid with fear. Fear of commitment, fear of responsibility, fear of becoming like my old man who drank himself to death and left my mother with nothing but bills and broken promises. So I did what Morrison men do best. I ran, left a note on her pillow, and disappeared into the night like a coward. I found out later that Sarah waited at that church for 3 hours. 3 hours in her wedding dress, with all her friends and family watching, hoping I'd show up and explain myself. Her grandmother, who'd flown in from Taiwan specifically for the wedding, held Sarah while she cried. That old woman had survived wars and famines and had crossed an ocean to see her granddaughter get married, only to watch her heart get broken instead. I sat there in my cab, engine idling, watching this girl in my side mirror as she started walking toward my truck. Every step she took felt like a countdown to Judgment Day. How in the hell could she know about Sarah? About that wedding? About the worst thing I'd ever done to another human being? My mind was racing through possibilities. Maybe she was some kind of private investigator. Maybe Sarah had hired someone to track me down. Maybe this was all some elaborate setup. But as she got closer, something else started nagging at me. There was something familiar about her face, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The way she carried herself, the shape of her eyes, even the stubborn set of her jaw. It all reminded me of someone, but I couldn't place who. She knocked on my passenger door, and I could see her clearly now through the window. Up close, she looked even younger, but there was an old soul behind those eyes, like she'd seen more of life than most kids her age should have. Her cheerleader uniform was wrinkled now, and I could see tear stains on her cheeks. But she stood there with her chin up, waiting for me to let her in. I reached over and opened the door, and she climbed up into the cab like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Most people are intimidated by the height of a big rig, but not this girl. She settled into the passenger seat and looked me straight in the eye, and that's when I saw it, the resemblance that had been bothering me. She had Sarah's eyes, the same warm brown color, the same gentle curve, the same way of looking at you like she could see right through to your soul. "You're probably wondering how I know about your wedding day," she said, her voice steady despite the obvious emotion she was fighting. Or should I say the wedding day that never happened? I couldn't find my voice. 23 years of talking to dispatchers and truck stop waitresses and CB radio conversations, and suddenly I was speechless. All I could do was nod and wait for her to continue. "My name is Emma Chen Rodriguez," she said, and my heart stopped beating for what felt like a full minute. Chen, Sarah's last name. And before you ask, yes, Sarah Chen was my grandmother, the woman you left standing at the altar 21 years ago. The world started spinning around me. Sarah's granddaughter, this beautiful, broken-hearted girl sitting in my truck, was Sarah's granddaughter, which meant Sarah had gotten married after all, had built a life, had a family. The thought should have made me happy, but instead it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Because if this was her granddaughter, then Sarah had to be. "She passed away 3 months ago," Emma said, reading my thoughts like she had some kind of supernatural ability. "Cancer. She fought it for 2 years, but in the end," her voice cracked, and she had to take a deep breath before continuing. "She never stopped talking about you, you know, even at the end. I felt like I'd been sucker punched by a heavyweight boxer. Sarah was gone. The woman I'd loved and lost and spent 21 years thinking about was gone, and I'd never even known she was sick. Never had the chance to apologize, to explain, to try to make things right. The guilt I'd been carrying all these years suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "I don't understand," I managed to croak out. "How did you find me? How did you know I'd be on this road today?" Emma smiled, but it was a sad smile, the kind that comes with knowledge you wish you didn't have. "Grandma Sarah kept track of you, Mr. Morrison. She knew you became a trucker, knew your route, knew your schedule. She had a whole folder full of information about your life, pictures of your truck, copies of your DOT records, even knew about that time you got a speeding ticket in Oklahoma last year." My head was spinning. Sarah had been keeping tabs on me all these years? While I'd been running from my past, she'd been watching my future unfold from a distance. It was both touching and terrifying at the same time. "She never remarried," Emma continued, and those 3 words hit me harder than anything else she could have said. "She dated a few guys over the years, but she always said her heart belonged to someone else, someone who wasn't ready to be loved the way she loved him. I had to grip the steering wheel to keep my hands from shaking. Then if she never married, how are you? My mom was her daughter from before she met you, Emma explained. Sarah was a single mom when you two started dating. Mom was only 5 years old then, so you probably don't remember her much. But Sarah used to tell me stories about how you'd take them both to the park, how you'd read bedtime stories to my mom, how you were the closest thing to a father figure she'd ever had. The memories came flooding back like a dam had burst in my mind. Little Michelle, Sarah's daughter, with her gap-toothed smile and her obsession with dinosaurs. I'd forgotten about her in all my guilt and self-pity over the years. I'd been so focused on what I'd done to Sarah that I'd forgotten about the little girl who used to call me Uncle Jake and beg me to push her higher on the swings. Michelle grew up, got married to a guy named Carlos Rodriguez, and had me, Emma continued. But she died in a car accident when I was 10. That's when I went to live with Grandma Sarah full-time. And that's when I started hearing all the stories about the man who broke her heart, but never really left it. I was crying now, and I didn't care who saw it. Tears streaming down my face like I was 5 years old again. Sarah had raised this girl, had told her about me, had kept my memory alive even after I destroyed everything good between us. And now Sarah was gone, and her granddaughter was sitting in my truck, looking at me with a mixture of anger and curiosity, and something that might have been hope. Why? I finally asked. Why are you here? What do you want from me? Emma was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the desert landscape. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I want to understand why you left her. I want to know what was so scary about loving my grandmother that you had to run away and never look back. That question hung in the air between us like smoke from a diesel exhaust, heavy and impossible to ignore. Why did I leave? It was the question I'd been asking myself for 21 years. The question that kept me awake during those long nights in truck stop parking lots. The question that had driven me to put 3 million miles between myself and the life I could have had. I turned off the engine and sat back in my seat, feeling every one of my 45 years weighing down on me. Outside, the Arizona heat was making the asphalt shimmer like water, and I could hear the distant rumble of other trucks passing by on the highway. But inside my cab, it felt like time had stopped completely. You want the truth? I asked, and Emma nodded. The truth is I was a coward, plain and simple. I was 22 years old, scared out of my mind and convinced that I was going to ruin your grandmother's life the same way my father ruined my mother's. I told her about my old man then, about how he'd been a good man when he was sober but a monster when he was drunk, how he'd promise my mother the world and then disappear for days at a time, leaving her to explain to the neighbors why she had bruises on her arms and why the electricity got shut off again, how he'd died in a bar fight when I was 19, leaving behind nothing but debt and broken promises. I saw myself becoming him, I continued, my voice getting rougher with each word. I was already drinking too much, already had a temper that scared me sometimes. The night before the wedding, I looked in the mirror and saw my father's eyes staring back at me. I couldn't do that to Sarah. I couldn't put her through what my mother went through. Emma listened without interrupting, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was processing everything I was telling her, weighing it against the stories her grandmother had told her, trying to make sense of it all. So you thought abandoning her was better than trying to be better? She asked, and there was no accusation in her voice, just genuine curiosity. You thought breaking her heart was kinder than risking disappointing her later? Put like that, it sounded even more stupid than it had felt at the time. I thought she'd be better off without me, I said. I thought she'd find someone who deserved her, someone who could give her the life she wanted without all the baggage I was carrying. She did find someone eventually, Emma said quietly. Sort of. She dated a teacher named Robert for about 5 years when I was little. He was nice, stable, everything you probably thought she needed. But she never loved him the way she loved you. She told me once that loving someone safe felt like wearing shoes that were the right size but the wrong style. Comfortable but never quite right. That hit me like a punch to the gut. Sarah had settled for safe because I'd been too afraid to try to be worthy of her love. She'd spent years with a man she didn't really love because the man she did love had convinced himself he wasn't good enough for her. There's something else, Emma said, reaching into a small purse I hadn't noticed before. She pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age and worn soft from handling. She wrote you a letter, the day after the wedding that never happened. She never sent it, but she kept it all these years. She made me promise to give it to you if I ever found you. My hands were shaking as I took the envelope. My name was written on the front in Sarah's careful handwriting, the same handwriting I remembered from the little notes she used to leave in my lunchbox when I was working construction. The envelope felt like it weighed 100 pounds. I stared at that envelope for what felt like an eternity, afraid to open it but unable to set it down. 21 years of wondering what Sarah had thought, what she'd felt, what she'd wanted to say to me after I'd destroyed everything between us. And now I was holding those answers in my hands. She read it to me once, Emma said softly, when I was about 16 and going through my own heartbreak. Some boy had broken up with me right before prom, and I was convinced my life was over. Grandma Sarah sat me down and told me about real heartbreak, about loving someone so much that their absence becomes a physical ache you carry everywhere you go. I looked up at Emma, this beautiful young woman who carried so much of Sarah in her features, in her mannerisms, in the way she spoke with such wisdom beyond her years. What did it say? Read it yourself, she said. But not yet. First, I need to tell you why I'm really here. Why I tracked you down, why I've been following your route for the past 3 days, waiting for the right moment to flag you down. 3 days. She'd been following me for 3 days. The thought should have been unsettling, but instead it felt like fate. Like Sarah herself had been guiding her granddaughter to this moment, to this stretch of highway where our paths would finally cross again. I'm 18 years old, Mr. Morrison, Emma continued. I graduated high school 2 months ago, and I'm supposed to start college at Arizona State in the fall. Full scholarship for cheerleading and academics. It's everything Grandma Sarah worked for, everything she wanted for me. But I can't do it. She paused, and I could see her fighting back tears again. Ever since she died, I've been angry. Angry at the cancer, angry at God, angry at life for being so unfair. But mostly, I've been angry at you, for leaving her, for making her spend her whole life loving a ghost, for not being there when she needed you most. I deserved every word of it. I'd earned her anger, her resentment, her hatred, but there was something else in her voice, something that sounded almost like. But then I started reading her journals, Emma continued. She kept them for years, wrote in them almost every day. And you know what I found? She wasn't angry at you. She was grateful. Grateful for the time you had together. Grateful for the love you shared. Even grateful for the way it ended because it taught her that real love doesn't have conditions or guarantees. I felt like I was drowning in emotions I'd spent decades trying to suppress. Sarah had been grateful for the pain I'd caused her. It didn't make sense, but then again, Sarah had always seen the world differently than I did. She'd always been able to find light in the darkest places. She wrote about you right up until the end, Emma said. Even when the chemo was making her so sick she could barely hold a pen, she'd write little notes about things that reminded her of you. A song on the radio, a truck she saw on the highway, a sunset that looked like the one you watched together on your first date. I was completely broken now, sobbing like a child in front of this girl I'd just met, but who somehow knew me better than I knew myself. All those years I'd spent running, all those miles I'd put between myself and my past, and Sarah had been carrying me with her every step of the way. I came here to hate you, Emma said, her own tears flowing freely now. I came here to tell you what a coward you were, to make you feel as much pain as she felt. But sitting here, listening to you, seeing how much you still love her, I think I understand now why she never stopped believing in you. We sat there in silence for a while, two broken people sharing a grief that spanned generations. The desert heat was making the cab feel like an oven, but neither of us moved to turn the air conditioning back on. Sometimes pain needs to be felt in its raw form, without anything to soften the edges or make it more comfortable. Finally, Emma wiped her eyes and looked at me with a determination that reminded me so much of Sarah, it took my breath away. There's something else I need to tell you, she said. Something Grandma Sarah made me promise to do if I ever found you. She reached into her purse again and pulled out a small velvet box, the kind that holds an engagement ring. My heart stopped as I recognized it. The ring I'd bought for Sarah all those years ago, the one I'd left behind when I ran. I'd wondered what happened to it, had assumed she'd thrown it away or sold it or buried it in her backyard. She kept it, Emma said, holding the box out to me. All these years she kept your ring. She told me it wasn't really hers to throw away, that it belonged to the love you two shared, and that love was bigger than both of you. I took the box with trembling hands and opened it. There it was, the simple solitaire diamond that had cost me 3 months' salary when I was 22. It looked smaller than I remembered, more modest, but it still caught the light the same way it had in the jewelry store when I'd imagined slipping it onto Sarah's finger. "She wanted you to have it back," Emma continued. "She said maybe someday you'd find someone else who deserved it. Someone who could love you the way you were afraid to let her love you." I closed the box and set it on the dashboard, unable to look at it anymore. "I never wanted anyone else," I said. 21 years on the road and I never even tried to find someone else. How could I? How do you replace someone who was perfect? "She wasn't perfect," Emma said with a small smile. "She burned dinner at least twice a week. She sang off key in the shower. And she had this habit of leaving coffee cups all over the house until we ran out of clean ones. But she was perfect for you, wasn't she?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. She had been perfect for me. Not because she was flawless, but because she'd loved me despite my flaws. Because she'd seen something in me that I'd never been able to see in myself. "Open the letter," Emma said gently. "It's time." With hands that felt like they belonged to someone else, I carefully opened the envelope. The paper inside was folded neatly, and as I unfolded it, I caught a faint whiff of the perfume Sarah used to wear. Something light and floral that always reminded me of spring mornings. The letter was dated the day after our wedding was supposed to happen, and it was written in the same careful handwriting I remembered from her grocery lists and birthday cards. "My dearest Jake," it began, and I had to stop reading for a moment to compose myself. Even after all these years, seeing those words in her handwriting felt like she was right there in the cab with us. "If you're reading this, it means Emma found you, which means I kept my promise to never stop believing that our paths would cross again someday. I hope you're well. I hope you found peace with the choice you made. I hope you've forgiven yourself for breaking both our hearts that day." I looked up at Emma, who was watching me with the same patient expression I remembered seeing on Sarah's face whenever she was waiting for me to work through something difficult. "Keep reading," she said softly. I took a shaky breath and continued reading Sarah's letter, each word feeling like a gift I didn't deserve but desperately needed. I won't lie and say I wasn't angry at first. I was furious, heartbroken, humiliated. I spent weeks wondering what I'd done wrong, what I could have said or done differently to make you stay. But then I realized something that changed everything. You didn't leave because you didn't love me. You left because you loved me too much to risk hurting me. My vision blurred as tears fell onto the paper and I had to be careful not to smudge the ink. How had she known? How had she understood what I couldn't even articulate to myself at the time? "I know about your father, Jake. I know about the demons you were fighting, the fears that kept you awake at night. I saw how you flinched sometimes when you got angry, how you'd leave the room when we argued because you were afraid of what you might say or do. I saw the way you looked at yourself in the mirror like you were seeing a monster instead of the gentle, caring man I fell in love with." Emma was reading over my shoulder now, and I could feel her presence like a warm anchor keeping me grounded as Sarah's words transported me back to a time when love felt both possible and terrifying. "You were never your father, Jake. Not even close. Your father hurt people because he was selfish and weak. You hurt me because you were selfless and scared. There's a difference, even if the pain feels the same. You were trying to protect me from something that was never going to happen, because you're not capable of being the man you were afraid you'd become." I had to stop reading and just breathe for a moment. 21 years of carrying guilt and shame. 21 years of believing I was a coward and a failure. And here was Sarah telling me that she'd understood all along, that she'd seen through my fear to the love underneath. "I want you to know that I forgive you," the letter continued. "Not because what you did was right, but because I understand why you did it. And I want you to know that loving you, even for the short time we had, was the greatest gift of my life. You taught me what it felt like to be truly seen, truly valued, truly cherished. That's not something I'll ever regret, no matter how it ended." Emma reached over and squeezed my shoulder. "She meant every word," she said. "Even at the end when the pain medication was making her confused about everything else, she was still clear about you, still talking about the man who taught her how to love." I wiped my eyes and kept reading, desperate to hear every word Sarah had wanted to say to me. "I hope you find happiness, Jake. I hope you find someone who can love you without the fear that held us back. But if you don't, if you choose to spend your life on the road like I suspect you will, I want you to know that you're carrying my love with you wherever you go. It's not a burden or a chain. It's a blessing, a reminder that you are worthy of love, that you always were." The letter was almost over. Just a few more lines in Sarah's careful script. "Take care of yourself, my love. Drive safely. And if you ever find yourself on Route 66 near Flagstaff, know that I'm thinking of you, that I'm grateful for what we had, and that I'm proud of the man you've become, even if you can't see it yourself. All my love, always and forever, Sarah. I folded the letter carefully and sat back in my seat, feeling like I'd just been through an emotional tornado. 21 years of questions had been answered in 3 pages of handwritten love and forgiveness. Sarah had known me better than I'd known myself, had loved me more completely than I'd ever thought possible. Now do you understand? Emma asked quietly. Why I had to find you? Why I couldn't just go to college and pretend none of this mattered? I looked at this remarkable young woman, this living piece of Sarah's legacy, and suddenly I did understand. She wasn't here for closure or revenge or even answers. She was here because Sarah's love was still alive in her, still working its magic even after death. What do you need from me? I asked. And I meant it. Whatever this girl needed, whatever would help her make sense of her grief and her anger and her loss, I would give it to her. Emma was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the desert landscape where the heat was creating those dancing mirages that make you question what's real and what's just wishful thinking. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but filled with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. I need you to tell me about her, she said. Not the stories I heard growing up, not the sanitized version she told a little girl about her lost love. I need you to tell me about the real Sarah, the woman you fell in love with, the woman who was more than just my grandmother. It was a request that caught me off guard. In all my years of carrying Sarah's memory, I'd never had anyone ask me to share it. The truckers I'd met over the years weren't exactly the type for heart-to-heart conversations about lost love, and I'd never stayed in one place long enough to form the kind of friendships where you bare your soul. She had this laugh, I started, surprised by how easily the words came. Not the polite little chuckle she'd do in public, but this real, honest-to-God belly laugh that would just take over her whole body. The first time I heard it, we were at this little diner in Flagstaff. Funny how we ended up back here, isn't it? And the waitress had just told us this ridiculous story about a customer who tried to pay for his coffee with a live chicken. Emma smiled, and I could see Sarah in that smile, could see the same joy that used to light up Sarah's face when she was truly happy. She laughed so hard she snorted, and then she got embarrassed about snorting, which made her laugh even harder. I fell in love with her right there in that moment, watching her lose control over something so simple and silly. That's when I knew she was different from anyone I'd ever met. I told Emma about Sarah's terrible cooking, how she'd burn water if you let her, but how she'd keep trying anyway because she wanted to take care of people. I told her about Sarah's obsession with old movies, how she'd cry every single time she watched Casablanca, even though she knew how it ended. I told her about the way Sarah would hum while she did dishes, always off-key but always with such contentment that it made the whole house feel like home. She used to leave little notes in my lunchbox, I continued, the memories flowing like water through a broken dam. Nothing fancy, just things like, have a good day or don't forget you're loved. I kept every single one of them until I left. I threw them all away that night along with everything else that reminded me of her. Biggest mistake of my life, throwing away those notes. Emma reached into her purse again. That thing was like Mary Poppins's bag full of surprises, and pulled out a small bundle of papers tied with a faded ribbon. You mean these notes? My heart stopped. There they were, dozens of little pieces of paper covered in Sarah's handwriting. The same notes I'd thrown in the dumpster behind my apartment 21 years ago. How did you? She went back for them, Emma said softly. The next day, after you left. She drove to your apartment and dug through the dumpster until she found them. She said she couldn't bear the thought of your love letters ending up in a landfill, even if you didn't want them anymore. I took the bundle with shaking hands, untying the ribbon that Sarah had used to keep them together all these years. The paper was yellowed and soft, but the words were still clear. Hope your day is as wonderful as you are. Don't work too hard. Someone loves you. Can't wait to see your smile tonight. She read them sometimes when she missed you, Emma said, especially toward the end, when the cancer was making her forget things. She said they helped her remember what it felt like to be young and in love and full of hope for the future. I was crying again, but this time it felt different. Not the desperate, guilty tears I'd shed earlier, but something cleaner, something that felt almost like healing. Sarah had saved these notes, had treasured them, had used them to keep our love alive even after I'd tried to kill it. There's something else, Emma said, and I was starting to realize that this girl had more surprises than a magician's hat. Something I haven't told you yet about why I'm really here, why I tracked you down, why this couldn't wait until after college. She took a deep breath, and I could see her gathering courage for whatever she was about to say. Grandma Sarah left me some money when she died. Not a fortune, but enough to pay for college and maybe a little extra. But she also left me a choice. Emma pulled out a folded piece of paper from her pocket, and I could see it was some kind of legal document. She set up a trust fund, but with conditions. I can use the money for college, or I can use it for something else. Something she called finishing what we started. I had no idea what that meant, but the serious look on Emma's face told me it was important. She wanted me to find you and give you a choice, Emma continued. She knew you'd been driving truck for 20 years, knew you probably never had the chance to build the kind of life you deserved. So she left instructions for me to offer you a partnership. A partnership? She bought a small trucking company about 10 years ago, Emma explained. Nothing fancy, just 3 trucks and some local contracts, but it's profitable and it's growing. She ran it through a management company, but she always said it was meant for you, a way for you to get off the road if you wanted to build something permanent for once in your life. I was stunned. Sarah had bought a trucking company? For me? Even after everything I'd done? Even after 21 years of silence? She'd been thinking about my future, planning for my happiness. The choice is this, Emma said, her voice getting stronger as she explained. You can keep driving for other people, keep running from whatever you're running from, and I'll go to college like a good girl and pretend none of this ever happened. Or, she paused, and I could see Sarah's determination in her eyes, the same stubborn streak that had made Sarah fight for our relationship, even when I was too scared to fight for it myself. Or, you can come home with me. Take over the trucking company. Help me figure out how to honor Grandma Sarah's memory and maybe, just maybe, stop running long enough to build the life she always believed you deserved. The offer hung in the air between us like a bridge spanning 21 years of regret and missed opportunities. Sarah was still taking care of me, still believing in me, still offering me chances I didn't deserve, but desperately needed. Why would you want that? I asked. Why would you want to tie your future to someone who hurt the person you loved most? Emma smiled, and it was Sarah's smile, full of warmth and understanding and infinite patience. Because she loved you, and I trust her judgment. Because I've spent the last 3 hours with you and I can see why she never stopped believing in you. And because, she paused, looking suddenly vulnerable, because I don't want to go to college. I don't want to be a cheerleader or study business or pretend that I'm okay when I'm not. I want to do something that matters, something that would make her proud. I looked at this remarkable young woman, this living embodiment of Sarah's love and strength, and I realized that she wasn't just offering me a business opportunity. She was offering me a chance at redemption, a chance to be the man Sarah had always believed I could be, a chance to honor her memory by taking care of the granddaughter she'd loved more than life itself. What would Sarah want me to do? I asked, though I think I already knew the answer. Emma reached over and took my hand, her grip strong and sure. She'd want you to stop running, she said simply. She'd want you to come home. I sat there holding Emma's hand, feeling the weight of 21 years of running finally catching up with me. Outside, the Arizona sun was starting to sink lower in the sky, painting the desert in shades of gold and orange that reminded me of Sarah's hair in the morning light. Everything felt like a sign, like the universe was finally giving me permission to stop being afraid. I need to ask you something, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you really want this? Or do you just think it's what Sarah would have wanted? Emma was quiet for a moment, considering the question with the same careful thoughtfulness I remembered from Sarah. Both, she said finally. I think it's what she would have wanted, but I also think it's what I need. I've been angry for so long, Mr. Morrison. Angry at death, angry at life, angry at you. But sitting here talking to you, I realize that anger isn't going to bring her back or make the pain go away. She squeezed my hand tighter. But maybe building something together, something that honors her memory and gives both of us a purpose, maybe that could help us both heal. Maybe that's what love really is, not just the romantic kind, but the kind that reaches across generations and brings broken people together. I looked down at our joined hands, mine weathered and scarred from years of hard work, hers young and smooth but somehow stronger than mine. What about college? What about your scholarship? College will always be there, Emma said. But this chance, this moment, this opportunity to do something meaningful with someone who loved her as much as I did, This might not come again. I thought about Sarah's letter, about her words of forgiveness and understanding. I thought about the ring sitting on my dashboard, the symbol of a love that had survived 21 years of separation. I thought about all the miles I'd driven trying to outrun my past, and how tired I was of running. "Okay," I said, the word coming out like a prayer. "Okay, let's do it. Let's go home." Emma's smile could have powered the whole state of Arizona. "Really? You mean it?" "I mean it," I said, and for the first time in 21 years I felt like I was making the right choice. "But I have one condition." Her smile faltered slightly. "What?" "We do this together, as partners. Not because I'm some charity case you're trying to fix, but because we both bring something to the table. You bring Sarah's vision and your own strength, and I bring 23 years of trucking experience and a desperate need to finally do something right." Emma nodded eagerly. "Partners," she agreed. "Equal partners." She paused, then added with a mischievous grin that was pure Sarah, "But I get to name the company." I laughed. Actually laughed. For the first time in months. "What did you have in mind?" "Sarah's Road," she said without hesitation. "Because every journey starts with a single step and every mile we drive will be in her honor." I felt something shift inside my chest. Like a weight I'd been carrying for decades had finally been lifted. Sarah's Road. It was perfect. It was a way to keep her memory alive while building something new, something hopeful, something that looked forward instead of backward. I started the engine and began the process of getting back on the highway. As I checked my mirrors and signaled to merge into traffic, Emma buckled her seatbelt and settled in for the ride. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Phoenix," she said. "That's where the company is based, where the trucks are parked, where our new life is waiting. Our new life." The words felt strange and wonderful at the same time. For 21 years I'd been living in the past carrying my guilt and regret like cargo that never got delivered. But now, sitting here with Sarah's granddaughter beside me, I felt like I was finally moving towards something instead of away from it. As we pulled back onto Route 66, Emma reached over and turned on the radio. A classic country song was playing, something about second chances and coming home, and it felt like Sarah herself had chosen the soundtrack for this moment. "Thank you," I said as we settled into the rhythm of the road. "For what?" "For finding me. For forgiving me. For giving me a chance to be the man Sarah always believed I could be." Emma smiled and looked out at the desert landscape rolling by. "Thank you for stopping," she said. "Thank you for listening. Thank you for being brave enough to try again." We drove in comfortable silence for a while. Two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment, carrying Sarah's love forward into whatever came next. The sun was setting behind us, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and ahead of us lay Phoenix, lay Sarah's Road, lay a future neither of us could have imagined when this day began. Sometimes the